From the station that made country music famous, 650 AM WSM, this is a Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast. Hi, it's Charlie Mattos, and in this episode, we sit down with Charles Esten. It was recorded Friday, November the 1st of 2011. It would be a busy day for Charles Esten. Light the Night, benefiting the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, would be that night at Nissan Stadium. Charles would also be hosting a great songwriter round to raise money for that cause. It's a cause that hits very close to home. Plus a brand new single, A Road and a Radio. A lot to talk about. Oh, we'd work in Deacon Claiborne as well at some point. Enjoy our Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast with Charles Esten. That is brand new from Charles Esten, A Road and a Radio. Oh, it sounds good on the radio, too. It probably sounds good on the road, I would think. Charles Esten, good morning, sir.
Good morning. It sounds extra good on WSM to me. That's a thrill.
Well, thank you for getting up early on what is going to be a busy day for you, a big day. But, boy, you have had a crazy few weeks. You are just back from a really special tour of the UK. And obviously that's a part of the world that you know very intimately from the theatrical aspect and the Buddy Holly story. So, and when you do theater, you really got to I imagine you got to feel like this is home for a little while.
Oh, I did for a little bit, yeah. I was there. It was really my first acting job when I was in my early 20s. I went all the way out to L.A. to get an audition for a show in London. And it took me there. And my wife and I lived in London almost 2 years. And just the perfect setup where I got to star in a West End show and play the great Buddy Holly. And that was a real bookend performance or show for me, where here I am playing music every night, playing guitar every night, singing and doing these emotional, dramatic scenes. I got to do that all these years later here in Nashville with Deacon Claiborne. And now to think that Deacon opened up that window again of performing, where I get to go back to L.A. Not only did I get to go back with the Nashville show, and we toured over there, and that's what really opened the door, but just last time I just got to go by myself, play my music, my songs, that song in incredible venues like Ulster Hall and Belfast and the Barrowlands and in Scotland, and then finally at Royal Albert Hall was our final night. It was incredible.
I don't know if when you stand on the Ryman stage, it's hard not to imagine the ghosts of all the people that have been there. But when I saw Royal Albert Hall, and there's a wonderful video on your social media, which I didn't realize was taken by a fan in the front, literally in the front row, of you soaking it all in at the end, and they pan that amazing triple deck of that building that dates back to the 1870s, and
well, you said the phrase yourself, soaking it in. I kept thinking to myself that there's this, and this is very true with the Ryman and the Opry, that there's this sweet spot you want to find yourself in, that there's a temptation to do one of two things. There's a temptation to think about it so much that you crumble under the weight and the amazing fact that you're there. You don't want to do that. Then the other one is I'm not going to think about it at all. I'm going to skate through it and detach and compartmentalize and just think about the song and finish and walk off. You really don't want to do that either, because you didn't come all this way to get to be in this place, not to experience it. So what you were watching was me sitting in the sweet spot of, this is overwhelming, but I'm going to take it in for just a second.
Sometimes you got to breathe, right? And just let it in.
Well, and that was the end of the tour and the end of that show. So I was just doing that. I've done that a number of times at the Ryman, at the Grand Ole Opry. You were talking about the ghosts and the historicity of these places and the beauty, and it's not just historical, but it's magically historical. Because moments, how many moments have you seen? I can't even rack my head around how many moments you've seen at the Ryman or the Grand Ole Opry that would qualify as completely memorable forever. And then they'll multiply that by, I was thinking the other day, and this never occurred to me, I always think about that circle, that area right there on the stage, who has trod that stage. The other day I was watching a clip on YouTube, and it was an old CMA award show, which we're coming up on. And I don't know how many years did they hold it at the Ryman.
Often, quite a bunch.
Well, I was never thinking about those front row seats, the first 10 rows. They panned that audience, and I just went, because I've sat in those seats at shows and everything. So the people that go to the Ryman, you are not somehow separated from that history by the fact that you're in the audience. You were sitting right where I was looking at Johnny Cash and Merle Haggard and Dolly Parton and everybody has sat in those seats, those pews, watching their cohorts and their friends up there.
So does it cross your mind that Paul McCartney and John Lennon and George Harrison and Ringo Starr have played on this stage at Royal Albert?
That I compartmentalized. Okay. That I detached. Okay. I told you, there's a line. You don't want to go too far in terms of thinking of these things.
Yeah.
You just want to sort of absorb it. I'll never forget, I was here my first day of recording for Nashville, and we were over at RCA Studio B, and we're walking in there, and we're walking in the door, and the guy there is very kindly telling me all the people that have recorded in the room I'm about to record in. And I literally turned to him and I said, shh, please. I'm going to ask you to stop. And then I'm going to ask you to let me record in there. And then I'm going to ask you to tell me everything you're telling me now.
Later.
Yes, I cannot hear that right now.
Oh, yeah. It's an amazing room, isn't it? And actually, the first time you walk in, I don't know if you had this feeling, but like it's almost sort of underwhelming in a way, and then you realize the magic of that room is not in technology. It's that it's the space.
Exactly.
You know?
That's exactly right. But I was just trying to hang on for dear life. Yeah, for sure.
Well, the other great thing about those UK audiences, and probably through much of Europe, but I think the UK specifically, is not only do they come out, but they've listened. They they know your stuff.
I've talked about this with a lot of the artists that go over there, and no insult to anybody that's listening here in Nashville or Tennessee or anywhere in the United States that WSM has heard. But it's the air we breathe, country music. It's the water we swim in. So the last thing you would ever think of country music as being is exotic.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's strange that it's semi-exotic to them. It's from a faraway place.
It's a treat.
It is a treat. But more than that, also, it's a strange blend of exotic and familiar, because, of course, we're playing the instruments and the chords that came from those countries, from from England and Ireland and Scotland, from their hills there that came to the hills here. So it's really kind of something special when you go there, because they're not just singing the hits of these artists. And, of course, I don't have any hits to sing. But they sing all the deeper cuts, and all my cuts are deep cuts. So it's a beautiful thing where they know all your lyrics and they're singing them back to you. We did road and radio there, and every time I hit that sing along, and they were all right there for it. That's sort of very special.
Yeah. We have visited many times throughout the years, and obviously between the Opry and WSM, you've been on this radio station a lot. But I can remember one time we were in the green room before one of your Tuesday night performances, and I want to say you were at week 47 of doing a song a week, and you were saying, I'm so close to the end, I can feel it. Yep. It ended up being 54. You went a little over a year of that, right. And officially in the Guinness Book of World Records for continuous releases. But I'm sure while you're doing it, it's kind of cool, and it certainly keeps the creative juices flowing. But when you think about it, you did 5 albums in a year. I mean, that's more than even Willie. And Willie's busy, you know?
You were not kidding. I can't imagine what I looked like at 47. My eyes must have been a little wide, a little catatonic. I have no regrets at all. That was just me being in a place that I sort of always felt like I wish I'd come to earlier. Mm-hmm. You don't want to change you can't look back. You can't second guess. And it was going to Hollywood and all that got me to get to play Deacon, that opened up all these doors. So I'm not doing that. But I'm saying I felt like somebody that had come home to a place he'd never been before, and I felt like I'm just going to dig in all the way. I'm a guy, there's a song we sing in Nashville, A Life That's Good. And in it, the line, so brilliantly written by Ashley Monroe and Sarah Siskind, is, I want to look back and say I did all that I could. As Nashville was in its 4th and 5th season, I wanted to make sure I didn't leave anything on the table. I didn't know if I was going to get to stay here. I didn't know where it was going to take me. I never wanted to look back and say, when you were in Nashville, you didn't make the most of being around those songwriters and those producers and those musicians. Yeah. I can look back and say I did all that I could. I put out 54 songs in 54 weeks, and it was a terror and a joy. We just put out Road and Radio, and when my wife and I finished and it was finally released, I go, can you imagine if I had 53 more to go? I somehow don't know how that happened or how we did it.
The great thing about that show too is that obviously it's a musical drama.
they took the music part really seriously, and they surrounded you guys with such wonderful people that if you wanted to soak it in and really, and you obviously came from a musical background, so you had that kind of in your back pocket a little bit, but
I wanted to put it in the front pocket.
That's what, yeah. But
exactly.
so there's a guy like Colin Linden, and you know, T-Bone, and Callie was certainly Buddy Miller, yeah. So they really put you in a place where like you could soak a lot of that in.
Well, it's because they cared so much with a white hot passion that kind of not only blew me away when I found out about it, but thrilled me to go, okay, they care that much. They're making it that good. And it was such a blessing to have T-Bone start this whole thing off because T-Bone wasn't aiming at country radio to imitate country radio, which would have been all right and we could have done all right. But I understand why. That country radio has a different reason for existing, and you're playing those songs for a different reason. There's songs that were on Nashville that almost couldn't be on standard country radio because they're so down-tempo. We had to go to a more evocative kind of those songs do exist clearly in the canon, but there's not enough of them on a day-to-day basis. So T-Bone went to that other place, and then we were able to play the more radio-friendly songs along the way. But what they were looking for was something that was undeniable in the music. And for me, I think that music, I'm kind of blown away. If you want to talk about how many albums were put out, I'm trying to remember how many singles it was over the course of 7 seasons. But it's an incredible number. And to me, if I have to be honest, I think the music was more bulletproof than actually the drama itself.
Yeah.
There were storylines and moments and lines, and the wonderful thing that is Nashville, and I don't have any regrets from it. This is not criticism. That were, I'm not sure. I can't think of the song where I was like, oh, what was that doing in there?
Why did we do that one? Right? Yeah.
The standard was incredibly high. And when you know how often, how quickly it all had to go, they were looking for songs constantly. I would get an email saying, this is the song you're singing. It would be like a Friday. This is the song you're singing. We're going into the studio and recording it on Monday, and then you'll be shooting it next Friday. Or Tuesday and Friday, and you're like, okay. And so you're all spending the weekend finding your key. You go in there, the best musicians in the world are there. You move it around, you find the key, you record it. While you're recording, you have to keep in mind, am I doing it in a Bluebird? Am I doing it in a stadium? Am I doing it?
It's a different feel.
Am I doing it at a funeral? What is the scene that is happening? So, because it was always very important never to go to the show up on the set, and here's this recording you made that feels emotionally detached from the scene. You wanted it to be perfect. So, yeah, you got me going on about how much I respect what everybody in the music department did, and obviously in the writing department and production as well. I'm only saying that the music, and that's the cool thing, because these other shows, they you can go back and binge Nashville like any other show, but this music, you know how accessible it is. You could play one today.
Oh yeah,
we could play one on our phone today. So that's amazing to me.
Yeah, I love that they did vinyl on a lot of them too. I've got a couple of the double vinyl sets, which are really cool as well.
I did an interview, one of those. Just they send you all the questions, and it was albums. It was about albums. It was just, what's the most recent album you bought? And I was like, oh man, I'm gonna have to say it's
my
the
record,
Nashville Cast album.
My record.
Fortunately, I bought another one after that. But I bought Highway Women after that. I didn't want to go. It's mine.
Oh, that's funny. That's a good record too, by the way. That's a great group of talent right there. So, Charles Esten is our guest. A Road and the Radio is the new single. We opened with that. I don't think I've ever thought of making this comparison, but it dawned on me when you were talking about the care they took with the music, and then the success that so many of those songs had instantly on the iTunes chart. But I have to think that a show like Glee, which also I thought really took the music very seriously, and while it was out there as far as plot goes and really kind of a dark humor at times, that in a way had to be a nice little prototype for, wow, look, if we put the care in the music, look at the success that show is having. We can do it in a different genre here if we put the care into it.
I agree, and I think it was also the place. It was a launching place for what we were about to do, because those were not, the difference there is those were covers.
Right, exactly.
And this was all about original songs written by Nashville songwriters. So as amazing and intense as that was, this took it another level. Smash was another one, the New York Broadway scene. That was a season or two before us, and so that's another, let's look behind the curtain, let's look at this world. And by the way, the person to ask about this is the person responsible. Callie Curry's our creator, but the genesis of the idea, the germ of the idea, was a guy you know very well, Steve Buchanan.
Mr. Buchanan, yeah. I hope he's listening this morning.
Me too. He came out and was at two of my shows with me, including Royal Albert, and that guy, I owe him so much. It's amazing how days that change your life, and it didn't just change my life, it changed a lot of lives. Steve Buchanan sitting somewhere here at the Opry, out at Opryland here, and thinking about, this is an interesting life. What would it be like behind the scenes around the Opry? And that more to behind the scenes just in Nashville itself. And I think about, let me just tip my hat to Steve Buchanan one more time and what he did through Gaylord, because it blows my mind that there's, what are the three crown jewels of Nashville, kind of performance-wise? It's the Opry, the Ryman, and the Bluebird, I have to think.
Sure. Yeah, that's a pretty...
Well, if you think about the fact that Steve was major in getting the Ryman fixed up, the Ryman renovation, right? And then after the flood in 2010, the Opry needed a major overhaul. Steve was at the forefront of that, okay? And then he thinks of this idea called Nashville that the Bluebird was doing all right, but even in the Bluebird documentary, I speak with them and they say that sort of changed things too, and secures. I mean,
it made it a destination. Where truly,
it was already historical, magical, everything. And for some people, for people in the know, it was a destination. Yeah. But of course, this idea that was Nashville, that Steve. That it turned into from Steve's idea, eventually goes to polish the gem of the Bluebird as well. So if you look at it, that's the three major things. And he had the idea for the show. Yep. That is Nashville, not just the show, but Nashville, the city, owes that guy a debt, and he loves the city with all his heart. So it's a thrill to me to be around him and to think that one guy did all that.
And you've played the Bluebird, obviously. How interesting to walk into the Bluebird after being on the set of the Bluebird, because they did a really cool job of recreating the Bluebird. Yeah. To anybody who saw it would have thought you guys were in the Bluebird.
We called it. I called it the faux bird, FAUX bird, but. There was nothing faux about it. You'd be in there. And I was blessed to be able to be doing both things at the same time. I would do a Bluebird round sometimes, then Deacon would do a Bluebird round. Of course, the very first episode was in the Bluebird. Yeah. I'll never forget, I took... My daughter came to visit, my teenage daughter, and I took her to the Bluebird. The next morning, I took her to see the other one, and her jaw was just hanging. Like the level of detail, just like the music, it was just showed how much people cared. And I think what you find in the end, and I think it's true here too about WSM and the Opry, that level of care, day to day, moment to moment. Even when you're doing it, it's like, does this matter? Is this important? Because nobody sees the work you do or the work some of the musicians do backstage. And the answer is, yeah, it does. It is important, because that heart, somehow there's an aroma of that about everything. And so I felt that was important too.
Well, we have a beautiful day, and it's going to be a beautiful night. We will talk about Light the Night when we return. A special night both at Nissan Stadium and at the Hutton Hotel at Analog tonight, involving Charles Esten, our guest this morning. More with Charles Esten next.
And shine so bright. We're gonna win this fight. And we're gonna light the night.
The music of Charles Esten, Light the Night. Charles Esten is the National Honorary Spokesperson for the Light the Night Walk. Leukemia and Lymphoma Society is the beneficiary. Tonight at Nissan Stadium, and then a really awesome event after that at 8 o'clock, Analog at the Hutton Hotel, with Charles Esten, Barry Dean, Jada Dreyer, and John Knight, writers and lighters to benefit the Leukemia and Lymphoma Foundation. We were talking before the air. I love the line early in that song, "We can make a difference. Take this walk of faith with me." And it's an amazing story how that song comes to you in its infancy, and it paints a really cool picture.
I don't know, but I find in my life that all the most important things tend to have a little something magical about them. Or my mom says there's no coincidences. She calls them all God incidences. Well, one for me was one of our biggest supporters is a guy named Gene Rapisardi. And how did he find out about us and all of this? Was he was out here at the Gaylord at the Christmas tree thing they would do. They have different people decorate a Christmas tree, then they auction them off. And the Gaylord Parade of Trees, I believe it was called. And they had asked me at the time to do a Christmas tree. So we assembled a bunch of ornaments. And you're doing a lot of stuff, and you're like, oh, is this important? Is this going to help anybody or anything? And not only does it help the Gaylord for whatever money was being raised then, but this guy heard about Light the Night from that and my involvement with it. And he started doing our Light the Night walks and became one of our biggest donors. And then he wrote this song, and he brought it to me, and I wrote enough that they sort of had to put my name on it too. It's called Light the Night, and it's become an anthem. It's played at all the Light the Night walks all across the country. And if you go download it or stream it, every cent from it goes to fight blood cancer for Leukemia Lymphoma Society.
And this is obviously a cause that is so close to your heart.
Oh, the closest, because it's my baby girl. Yeah. When my littlest was 2.5, she was diagnosed with leukemia. And I'll skip right to the end of the story and say she's 20 years old. She turned 20 just a couple days ago. And so she is our hero and our angel, because of just those were some couple tough years, and she was just a little peanut at the time. Mm-hmm. But when we were done with it, we knew very well that it was due to a lot of research. When I was a kid, when you were a kid, it was a death sentence, leukemia. Mm-hmm. And it was only research, and it was only fundraising that funded that research that meant I got to see my daughter turn 20. Yeah. So you feel beholden, and not just beholden, but you feel like you want to turn around and help any way you can. And when I came to town here, another thing that helped me was the great Pete Fisher, who was a general manager?
Yeah, sure was.
Yeah, was general manager here at the Grand Ole Opry. He's the one that got me involved with the Nashville and the Middle Tennessee Leukemia Lymphoma Society for the Light the Night Walks, which, of course, is tonight. Starts at Nissan Stadium, walks through the gorgeous streets of Nashville. You'll see fireworks in the air, maybe a building or two colored up. But if you see those red lanterns, white lanterns, and yellow lanterns, that's Light the Night, and that's what we're doing out there.
Wow. And then Analog at the Hutton Hotel.
Yeah, afterwards, I'm having an event called Writers and Lighters. Mm-hmm. The lighters are all the folks that anybody that comes and buys a ticket will be helping to light the night for somebody. And the writers are my great friends Barry Dean and Jada Dreyer and John Knight, hit songwriters, all of them. So we get to sit there with our guitars and people that care a lot about fighting this dreaded disease and make a little beautiful music. That's one of my favorite things about this town, is how the music comes together for people. And the songwriters in this town and the artists are so generous with their time. And I think we all just sort of love knowing that that's a pure place where it's turning into something absolutely good. Analog is a good room too, isn't it? Yeah, it's a beautiful little room. We got some. They got the sofas right up front. You got some other tables all around. This is the first time I've even played around there, so that it has to do with this is a thrill for me. Yeah, and the walk is really magical, isn't it? It is. Yeah. I was saying it's just a parade of symbolism. I mean, anytime people come together and walk and march for something important, you know it has meaning. And then the fact that you're doing it at night, I've said it before, but when that first diagnosis come through, a couple things you feel is, one, you feel very alone, and one, it feels very dark. And so the antithesis to all of that is you're standing on the footbridge there in Nashville. Yes, the one where Deacon asked Raina to marry him. You're standing there with 5,000-6,000 people walking through, and they're carrying these lanterns, and the yellow lanterns are in memory of people that lost a loved one, and red ones are in support of people who are fighting their battle right now, and the white ones are like my daughter gets to carry one because she is a survivor. And the ceremony beforehand, they have all the survivors and all those white lanterns go to the center of this massive crowd, and they wait, and when they're told to, they all light their white lanterns, and you see this massive group of people that are there because other people cared. So there's all kind of special things about it. Once again, it's got magic all around it. This thing blesses me and my family far more than we bless it. So we're grateful to be there. If you want to be a part, by the way, or donate, I know a lot of folks are listening either around the country or we're the kind of the lunchtime show for many in the UK. Sure. But it's the easiest website on the planet, lls.org. It's that simple, lls.org, and there's a big red button that says donate, and you can find out everything that they do and help them out if you can. Absolutely. And if you want to join Team Addie, my art team, you're welcome to do that too. Just go to charlesesten.com, and you can find an LLS link there too.
That is tonight. You are off a couple of days after Christmas to a place I've always wanted to go see a show. I'm a huge Mary Chapin Carpenter fan, and the Birchmere was kind of her home field early on in her career. And that just you talk about the people who've been through the Bluebird. Many of those same people have been through the Birchmere. That's a great place, isn't it?
Well, let me also say that's where I grew up. I'm an
Alexandria boy. Yeah. So that's that truly is a hometown.
It truly is a hometown place. Yeah. It's a stone's throw from the church I grew up in, right up the street, and has a rich history there. I honestly wish I'd seen more shows there growing up.
Yeah. Have you met Chapin? You guys seem like you would get along really well.
I don't know her, but my goodness, my family was huge fans, especially Stones in the Road. We played that. I mean, it was a little thing we did. I've never even really shared this anywhere. We would play Passionate Kisses and that gorgeous piano intro. Yeah. My daughter Taylor, when she was just like 3, 4, 5, we would put it on in the kitchen, and she would dance like slowly like a ballerina to the gentle little piano intro, and then later it kicks into the rockin' part, and we would just all dance around like crazy. So I have the most joyful memories of that song. I never got to share that with her. Maybe I just did. I don't know. Play that today for me, would you?
She tells a great story of a meet and greet with a young girl fan, and she goes, the little girl told her that her favorite song of hers was Passion and Fishes.
Passion and Fishes.
But she also goes on. People will tell you almost anything in a meet and greet line or at the merch table. She also goes on to say this one guy came up to her and said, "So you sure do change guitars all night long. You play them, or are they just props?"
Wow.
So you never know what you're going to get. But
that's the funniest part of that is if it's a prop, you're really going to a lot of effort to change it.
I wouldn't have to change it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Bring
me another prop.
That's funny. But I have seen you interact with fans, and there are artists who do it because they know they have to do it, and they know they're supposed to do it. And, if I go to the merch table, I'll sell a little more merch if I'm there than if I'm not there. But you really do seem to embrace that. And even if it's 15 or 30 seconds with someone to take a photo and just say thank you for coming, it makes their day, but you seem to really enjoy it as well.
Well, thank you for saying that. I guess I honestly do. I don't know. I think I've been trying to, as you get older, you go, what's this all about? Why did it all come together? Why am I doing the acting and I did the comedy and I'm doing this? And I sort of found out that the through line was making people feel something. Mm-hmm. I don't know why that moves me, but that's what it seems to be all about. That's what all the Whose Line Is It Anyway? All the comedy was about making somebody laugh. Yeah. And I loved that, but I also wanted to do the other stuff. So a lot of the acting is, let's make them cry. And then, of course, the music can encompass both of those two. You can make somebody laugh with a song and make them cry with a song. And so when somebody comes up to you and cares enough that either your acting or your music has moved them enough that they've waited 2 minutes on a balmy night, let alone an hour in the cold. Yeah. I want to meet that person. I want to say thank you to that person, and honestly, I want to hear what it means to them, because that's why I'm in it.
Yeah. You referenced Whose Line. I've always wanted to ask you this. How much did that show help your songwriting? Because I have to think you cannot do that show unless you are really quick. I mean, the whole thing is to be, and it's hard to be quick. It's even harder to be quick and funny and clever and humorous, and regardless of who the cast of that show is, they nail it every time. It's amazing.
Well, thank you very much. I don't know. It's a little chicken and the egg thing, because I don't know if the improv helped the songwriting or if the songwriting helped the improv. Yeah. I had been doing that for a while. And another thing that helped with my improvisational skills was I was in a band for many years in college and after. And there was a whole lot of times where I'm standing in a microphone while my drummer's tuning, or my guitar player's tuning, or my drummer's fixing a drum head or something, and you're just standing there, so you got to say something into that microphone. So I think I got very comfortable being in front of audiences from that. So I think they feed each other, but it was I tell you what, once you have had to write a song based on a title in 15 seconds, writing a song with a room with two great songwriters in Nashville, and you have
a whole
damn day. Please, that's a piece of cake.
How often do you stumble upon you if you're flipping the channel?
I actually, I don't flip the channels as much as I used to.
Okay.
And anyway, nowadays, more it's you search, you find it on the internet or on YouTube or something like that. People send me clips or I see them on social media. But I don't know. I tend to switch away. I'm not one of those guys that loves to go watch that. But sometimes I just do it for thinking about where I was at that point and how far I've come since.
Charles Esten is our guest. You're going to do one live for us in studio as we wrap this one up. I love the setup to it. This is one of the newer ones that kind of worked its way into the tour, huh?
Well, I've always been I get distracted easy, so I was working on my music for the tour and all the guitar parts and all the and getting ready to go to the UK, and somehow just banging on a guitar that I was tuning up, and a song came to me, and I sort of had to take a couple hours there and get off the track and write this song. But it turned out perfectly because throughout this tour there was a portion where it was just me and a guitar. Everybody, the band left the stage before they came back, and I just started playing this one, and it sort of connected. And I was talking about funny and sad. I think this one I like it because it has both at the same time. A little bit country. Yeah. It's called I Still Do. I used to drink, and I still do. I'd go out and have a couple, and then I'd have a few. I always been picky, only beer or wine or booze. I used to drink, and I still do. I used to smoke, and I still do.
Live in studio with Charles Esten. Oh, that's good. That one needs to find an Opry gig at some point.
I was bound to.
Yeah. Oh, I could see the folks in the UK enjoying that one as well. That's an easy one to start singing along with.
They understood that one, yeah. I'll be actually at the Opry on November 16th.
Excellent.
At the Ryman, yeah.
Okay.
The Ryman, Opry at the Ryman, which is one of the sweetest things in the world, and the 23rd.
Yeah, and the beauty of those is so many of them are 2-show nights, too. You kind of get you really get to soak it in there. So 127 years old. She still looks pretty nice.
Oh, she's still pretty, ain't she?
We started the segment off with talking about Royal Albert Hall and just soaking in the atmosphere of that building. It's interesting, and I've traveled a lot with Vanderbilt doing sports, and it's easy to travel the country or travel the world and see absolutely nothing. Do you because you can go from hotel to bus to venue to hotel to bus and see. Do you try and make a point of experiencing where this world, this gig, this beauty has allowed you to go?
I try. I see other artists that I don't know how they do it. They seem to make such an intentional point of it that they absolutely do dig into any city. Then sometimes it's just like, how do they even do that? Because you do have your sound check, you do have your meet and greet beforehand. You're just trying to recover from the night before. Mm-hmm. You have different radio interviews in the town and everything like that. I definitely try. We try that more in the scheduling as well. Like, let's get a day there.
Build in an extra day. Yeah,
if you can, for sure. But believe me, that is the strange life of the artist. Is one of the reasons you want to do that. I want to hit the road and play my music and see the world. And you're right. You see the world's hotel rooms and you see the world's stages. So
it's probably the beauty of theater. And then that first experience in London with the Buddy Holly story, because you're camped out there. You're doing 8 shows a week probably with matinees and some evenings.
Exactly right.
But you really are living there.
Exactly right. And it's also, that reminds me very much, like I said, I told you they're bookends of Nashville. Yeah. I'm shooting this show and I get to move to this place that I love so much. It's home by far now. This is the place. We did not go back to Los Angeles. We stayed here, and here we are. But
and the great part about that show is it was shot here. So you must drive around town, and just almost every turn is a flashback to some scene.
Amazing. If you took out a highlighter and you took the map of Nashville and you put a highlighter over every place we shot, it would be a big old yellow map. Yeah. The funny thing is, originally, I remember, that when you go to shoot on location somewhere, you have to set up a base camp. You need all the trailers. There's a hair and makeup trailer. I never had hair or makeup. I just walked onto the set, but the other folks did. And then you also have wardrobe and all the electronics and everything. So you really need some sort of small camp, like a military operation. And we put ours in vacant lots all around Nashville. Of course, it's 7 years later, and there's not a vacant lot to be found in this whole city. They're all. I'm telling you, so many places where we parked our trailers are skyscrapers now. It's unbelievable. Hard to see.
I lived downtown for almost the entire run of that show, and every time I would be walking up Church Street, there's the record label right next to Morton's. you know. So,
there they are, screwing up my traffic.
Well, that did happen once or twice as well, but I was pretty good about it. Charles Esten, it's been such a fun morning. And tonight, Nissan Stadium, the walk, the Light the Night to benefit the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and then an analog at Hutton Hotel, the Writers and Lighters for the same cause with Charles Esten, Barry Dean, Jada Dreyer, and John Knight. You can get, and if you're not in town and can't participate in these, there are walks around the country, but you can get all the information, and you can certainly help out at lls.org. Come see us again.
Thanks, Charlie. I will.
Thanks for listening to our Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast. Our digital program director is Jay Patrick. Our digital producer is Haley Hall. Marketing and promotions director, Nicole A. Judd. General manager of 650 AM WSM is Chris Kulik. I'm Charlie Mattos. We'll see you next time on our Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast.